everybody and welcome to Takashi Reviews, back with another Japanese deep dive and continuing on that journey of Takashi Ishii's very interesting filmography. I've watched quite a few films now, I'd say up to about 6 or 7 at this point, and I'm starting to really get an understanding of this director and what his whole deal is in terms of doing the pink genre films, Yakuza movies, hyper-realistic movies, very, very damaged individuals. Now, this one's quite interesting because he did do Black Angel Volume 1 and 2, 1998, 1999, and then 2000 with this one. And as I mentioned in those videos, a bit more kind of broader, more commercial friendly kind of films, tagging into the girls and guns kind of genre. And it appears the director's gone back to basics with writing and directing this film Frozen, or Freezing Me, I think it's known in the States. This does have a Vinegar Syndrome release on Blu-ray in terms of the US, but it's very, very expensive, as mentioned before. It's quite a lot of money for a regional locked edition with very limited extras. I'm hoping that Third Window Films or 88 Films may require the rights to this film and put it on a Blu-ray release in terms of the UK market, but just a little bit too expensive for what the film is at the moment. But nice to see more of these films getting a bit more of an international kind of release, and some of his films are getting picked up for that kind of HD transfers. I do have the Tartan Asian Screen one, which is perfectly fine. Pretty decent quality for what it is in terms of a DVD, and unfortunately you don't really get any extras, just kind of like text kind of filmography stuff, information, and as you can see there, it's very standard kind of edition, but does the job, being the fact that it is a very hard access film. And this film follows our main protagonist character, Chikiro, if I say the name correctly in terms of the character name, which is basically the main star of the film, as on there. And basically this follows quite a dark fucking film. This is a pretty nasty film in terms of the atmosphere and the dread of it, and of course the violence as well. But this basically follows a character which has been sexually assaulted, she's been raped. There's a tape that's gone around many, many years ago. The film opens with a kind of a lamp and a kind of a snowy kind of setting, and then you see bits of this kind of, snuff tape that's kind of been, abstract, that you see, very similar to what he would usually do with the Angel Guts film, Angel Guts with Flash. Similar thing he did with that. Very effective, very gruesome, and not very nice to watch. He shows snippets of this and blurry images here and there. And basically she's had this really nasty thing happen to her in terms of 5 or 4 predatory men that basically have assaulted her in a cabin somewhere at some point. She never reported this. She kind of just went about her life, and then she met someone that she fell in love with, and then through this person she's managed to kind of put that aside. And again, this is another talking point, another kind of stigma in this idea of the zeitgeist of Japanese culture, and this idea of if you are sexually assaulted or even raped, it is deeply shameful, not just in terms of the societal kind of and viewpoint of other people looking at you, but also internally. And I think that's what this film's trying to go for, in terms of a deeply troubled individual that's dealing with a lot of fucking trauma, dealing with a lot of kind of personal kind of demons. Basically, these kind of predatory kind of men track her down in terms of an anniversary, basically kind of rape that they're trying to do, which is pretty fucking bonkers. And they basically track her down, and they want to celebrate by recreating that scene again, essentially. And we're introduced to each individual men, one every sort of like 20 minutes or so in the film, 25 minutes or so, and we get to know more about them, their charming personalities, very kind of aggressive, very kind of pathetic, weak men, parasites, I would say, very different types of ages and kind of structures. One's more traditional 90s youth, one's a businessman, an older man who's got a lot of internal rage. Clearly he's obviously not doing well in work, and another one's getting out of prison later on. So it might be better for you. Each one is individual in terms of how they present themselves and how they treat her, how they talk to her. Ultimately, they just want to use her as essentially a sex slave, and they want to see her as property. I've turned up, I'm going to just crash your location, I'm going to invade your personal space, your life, your dignity, your well-being, and then just do what I want, say what I want, and kind of blasé about it, essentially, if that's the way we're saying, in terms of just casually just kind of strolling in. And this woman who, in every single aspect of the situation of this nearly 2-hour movie, which is one of the problems I have with it in terms of my experience, is that she doesn't fucking do anything. And then when she does, she goes to the extreme in pretty rash kind of ways, in pretty impulsive, rash kind of ways. She doesn't call the police. She doesn't ask for assistance of this tape and the imagery that's been presented at the start of it, that she is willing to kind of cooperate and keep quiet and let these people kind of just invade her mentally, physically, emotionally. And it's kind of hard to watch because you're kind of screaming at the screen saying, why isn't this character fucking doing anything? And then when she does, she goes to the absolute complete extreme. And instead of when she does eventually start killing these individuals, which is what the film is, starts putting them in freezers, buys new freezers and puts them in there to keep them as beautiful kind of pieces of her past. She's having essentially a mental breakdown, and she doesn't do them in kind of traditional ways. She has a knife. Instead of a knife, she gets a water bottle and she hits someone on the head multiple times with a water bottle. And then she does different ways of killing these individual people, unique in the sense that we haven't seen this type of thing before. I mean, I haven't seen someone being killed by a water bottle, which I guess could happen. It can have some pretty nasty kind of trauma to your head. You can get knocked out from that. That can cause some serious damage, and everybody for that. But the logical sense would have been to use the knife, or to walk out the fucking door, or to call the police, not to go to these such extremes. Confusing kind of experience to watch in this film. Very conflicted in terms of my opinion of this film. I didn't really get a lot out of it, if I'm being completely honest. I think in terms of this director and his writing and what I've seen of him previously to this point, it's been very compelling. It's been very engaging. It's been quite different. It's, again, pushing the boundaries, having unique kind of cinematography, editing structure, having unique characters that have a voice, that have some agency, diving into dark subject matters in terms of, pornography or rape or sexual assaults or drugs and things like that, or, Yakuza aspects, this idea of ownership and identity and LGBT kind of aspects. There's all sorts of interesting topics this director has kind of dived into, and having his own voice and exploitative kind of nature. And I've really enjoyed a lot of the journeys he's been involved in terms of his characters. Even something like Angel Good to Red Flash, I feel that was one of his weaker films, but I thought that was such an interesting kind of take on that material, flipping the script on a pink genre. And this one isn't a pink genre film. It's definitely more of an exploitation, more going into the Spill on Your Grave kind of territory. I guess more so of the Last House on the Left, Wes Craven. It sort of did remind me as well as the season 5 of Dexter, where the storyline of that is basically a bunch of men coming together to basically sexually assault, unleash, themselves on certain individuals and then dumping them. It kind of reminds me of something like that, where you got the similar kind of storyline. And the film's primary focus is about, I guess, the ego, about how men view themselves in a certain way, how they are just weak, kind of paper crumbling people. And even the boyfriend becomes a very unlikable character towards the third act of the film in terms of his kind of actions he does and some of the things he says. It's kind of pissing me off a bit. And maybe that's the point of the film. Maybe that's the whole design of it. Maybe I'm not seeing it in the way that it should be seen. Married to isn't doing or saying or acting in a logical way, but maybe that's the point. Maybe that she is having a complete and utter psychotic breakdown, and she's going about this idea of the invading kind of predatory men that have re-entered her life so many years later, disrupting her work, disrupting her marriage, because she's about to get married. And then she kind of folds in on herself, and then she reacts and impulses in the wrong possible way against these men in terms of killing them, freezing them. And while aesthetically it is a cool idea in the sense of them being frozen, and it's very kind of nasty and very much a horror-filled kind of thriller, I think the end results, essentially the ends don't justify the means, if that makes sense. Even by the last shot of the film, I was like, fuck me, really? Oh my God. It kind of feels like a nothing experience, a pointless experience ultimately. I do think there's a bigger conversation in this film. I do think there's more of a talking point. Maybe I might get more out of it later on if I do get to watch it, maybe in a HD format, maybe if there's a bigger conversation at play compared to his other films. I just feel from a first time viewing and what I got out of it, I thought the main character was highly questionable in terms of her actions and her motivation and what she does, what she doesn't do. Yes, she is a victim. Yes, that she has obviously got a lot of deep trauma, but there have been multiple opportunities in that film to get the fuck out, to do something, to step away from it. And then even when she does try and, defend herself or does try and get out, she falls right back into it. And, is the fear of being seen and criticized and viewed in a certain way in terms of the actions of certain men so fearful, being the fact that these men are just blasé, just turning up, invading, not giving a shit, leaving all their evidence, assaulting this woman and just not giving a fuck. And other people are just, are seeing them in the buildings, and surely there is, I'm thinking of a more of a logical sense, but maybe that's not how I should be seeing the film. So yeah, that's all I got in terms of Frozen, in terms of my outlook and my viewing of the film. I definitely think I need a second viewing, maybe some point down the line. Maybe I need to go about it in a different way, or maybe it's just a bad film. It's simple as that. It could be just a pointless rape revenge film that doesn't achieve anything, doesn't do anything. Maybe I'm trying to find things that are not in the film. Being the fact I know this director and writer can do so much better and has done so much better. It's a bit more of an extreme double backing down to his previous kind of filmography, and it doesn't quite work for my liking personally. So what are your thoughts and impressions on Freezer or Freezer Me? Do you have the Vinegar Syndrome HD release? Does that make the film better? Please comment down below. So in time goes on for reviews. Signing out.